you
All right,
know.
I think yeah. So I already clicked live. As always, I think we're live, but I don't actually
We
get
are live. Or
uh
as Ted Lasso would say, live.
so Chuck, it's been like a week since we last spoke, which doesn't happen often that a week passes.
Yeah.
Um and where we don't at least touch base with each other on the phone. So I'm really excited to talk to you and see how things have been going since I last saw you, which was in Atlanta.
Yeah. That was, I know it was a short time, but it was a great time and really exploring some of the really impressive architecture there. I mean, it was really cool to stay with your family in the Hyatt Regency. And of course, the kiddos were ultra cute together. I mean, it was an awesome time all around and just really a nice experience to get to know Atlanta a little better.
Yeah, definitely. Before we dive into today's topic, also wanted to mention real quickly the passing of sort of an artistic icon. I know you commented on it in the Facebook. You want to talk about that some? I don't know too
Yeah.
much, but I have seen some of my artist friends actually posting about this.
Oh yeah. So Claes Oldenburg, and to be quite honest with you, I didn't know he had done the free stamp, which is kind of what I grew up walking past on the way to various things in downtown Cleveland until later. I knew about the Spoon Bridge and Cherry in Minneapolis and kind of that bow and arrow type structure in downtown San Francisco. And he really is. He's notable in the fact that these public art landmarks are a part of our city. And of course, murals kind of at this point are dime a dozen in a sense. Certainly some of them are, but pop and large public pieces of art like this really aren't. It's really something that when you think about even some of these pieces, you really think of them as one of the central icons in some of these cities. So it's cool to think that he was able to have such a playful and fun relationship with the civic spaces he designed, and that while it's sad that he passed, he really did live a great life.
Yeah, for sure. And I think a lot of this stuff, whether you actually recognize it or not, um, all of these looks are somewhat familiar now because we've slowly grown accustomed to seeing art in our urban environments, and I
Yeah.
think that without a doubt he was a big contributor to that movement of making it a lot more commonplace.
Oh yeah, you could say he's a pioneer in a sense, because I mean maybe you had graffiti earlier, but that was kind of taboo then, and you certainly didn't have arts districts like Wynwood and all of those popping up everywhere. So something like the Free Stamp or the Spoon Bridge and Cherry, or like the badminton things in Kansas City, they'd stand out quite a bit more in the
Mhm.
'80s, which basically seems like the Stone Age is now. I mean, you know, like that than what you've seen. So he did have a huge influence, I think.
Yeah. So shout out to him. So anyway, our topic today also, of course, has to do with urban environments, and I I gotta give you some congratulations. We briefly mentioned this in the previous episode, but you are now Dr. Chuck
Yes.
or
Thank you.
Dr.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's pretty surreal. It's been an incredibly long journey to get here, and I'm thankful that immediate family supported and stuck by me throughout this, and it's exciting because it's been such a long process, and to be finally done now, it kind of feels like, you know, there's that next stage coming up, and that's exciting to kind of have that to kind of anticipate and see what's next. So thank
Right.
you again.
Yeah. So I guess we're going to talk a little bit about this. We can begin by just seeing how you feel.
Yeah, I mean, it's unbelievable, and I think anyone who has been in the process of writing a thesis, it's almost hard to relate unless you've been in that. And it's such a solo journey. I remember one of the people in my program said it's almost like driving off a cliff, because through so much of your American primary and secondary, and even post-secondary, you kind of have a process that's helping you along. And even if you have a struggling semester or whatever, you need this many credit hours to graduate, you have this many semesters left, and you're kind of in a group, right? So you can kind of like, in that, you can kind of, this sounds kind of bad, but you can almost kind of settle for like a B. A B can get a degree, I guess, right? And this is not like that. It's really, you are putting something out there that is a piece of original research on behalf not just of you, but of the doctoral chair who you work with, who I had the opportunity to work with, the incredible Dr. Martha Louise Stewart, who was my advisor and was patient and provided just continuous encouragement. And I'm so thankful to her throughout that. And you're representing a university. So you really have to publish a piece of original, legitimate work that other people will then look at. And that's been one of the craziest things too, is that people now from, Seattle and the Pacific Northwest, I think I have maybe someone who needed a specific citation because they've downloaded it a few times now. But then I've got someone from Ireland and Spain. So that's pretty cool. I mean, to like have, even just in a very small way, that I contributed a verse to the knowledge in a professional way. That's
So
flabbergasting to me.
You're right. You're right. So what's sort of the field or topic that you contributed to? I know you weren't actually in school for urban planning, as shocking as that sounds.
Yes. No, I was not. I was in school for higher education leadership, and I was encouraged to go into that program because I'd always had a love for my college experience and the, support and the involvement I'd been a part of. And I had a family member and I had a supervisor actually in college when I worked for a football team that both had been, one was progressing through the program still, and one, my older brother, had finished the program. And so they kind of encouraged to me because I was young and still kind of figuring things out. I was like, okay, why not get all the way through school and get a terminal degree now? We're in our young 20s then, right? So that was, I did that, and it relates on a multiple level thing. It relates to the university itself in higher education, whether that be the largest 4-year major university in the country by enrollment right now, the University of Central Florida, or a private college or liberal arts like Williams or Amherst, or community colleges or other schools. And it also it broadly relates to organizational leadership, and then to the teaching and the research side. So really just the university as a unit, and wherever you are within that, it kind of functions from that research and that teaching and that kind of organization and organizational grouping, like from student affairs and other elements of that.
Right. So I mean, do you want to dive into what you researched and what you discovered?
Yes. So I focused on, my topic specifically was student experiences with university accessibility services, a quantitative inquiry. Of course, if you go to either the library UCF website or Google Scholar, if you need your own citation or you want to read it, you are welcome to look that up. We can also link it in the YouTube description. And really what I was looking at was the experiences of students with exceptionalities in a higher education setting. Just to give our viewers some practical context on that, at the K-12 level, you are covered under IDEA, which is the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. That is a federal legislation ensuring kind of comprehensive supports throughout your time in school. So basically, whether you want it or not, you've got it. You're getting pulled for testing, you are getting the extra support or someone pushing into your classroom to make sure and kind of monitor and manage your academic goals. And when you go to college or a post-secondary option, all of that sort of goes away, right? So you are able then still to seek out accommodations, extended time, like extra tutoring or class selection, but you need to actually provide that documentation and kind of deliver it throughout the process. And you kind of have to be your own self advocate. So we're looking at a smaller number of students that are doing this. And what I wanted to see was how their experiences were shaped and kind of whether they derived benefit from the program, what their academic success rate looked like, and just their overall experience in college, and if that kind of had a dynamic influence on their success or not.
Gotcha. And what did you decide?
Yeah, so the results were generally very positive. It actually reflected that this was done at a major research university in the southeastern United States. I took some data from this campus that over a several week period, and in doing so, I was able to get a number of student responses, and 83% of the respondents reported getting a 3.0 or higher GPA during their time in college. And I believe around 92% of the students on campus reported that they had either a positive or a very positive experience in using the office. They found it somewhat or very beneficial. So that was good to know in terms of finding that there was the direct use there. It was also interesting that it didn't really seem to matter as much whether students sought out 4 or 5 services or 1 or 2. It was more just important from a baseline that students were intentional about actually going out and seeking and pursuing their accommodations. Where you saw some level of difference was if some students chose to wait to pursue accommodations. In this case, the students that were actually responding to the questionnaire, which was a relatively small sample size of them, they actually were, mostly everyone responded right away. And that was significant, finding that had a positive influence on their success as well, that they kind of took that initiative to seek out programs that were helpful to them.
Gotcha. Just so from my understanding, did you say that the exceptionalities included physical, all kinds of sort of learning impairments, or
yes, so that's a good question. And obviously, of course, the Student Accessibility Services office at this university serves all types of accommodations and service needs. But the focus of my research was more on invisible exceptionalities, kind of like learning exceptionalities or ADD or OCD. But because of the nature of the confidentiality of the study at this major research university, we were not able to necessarily identify who was maybe physically impaired versus having something that was more like ADD or learning disability. So this was basically all students on campus with some type of exceptionality.
Okay, I see. So it was inclusive of everything, and you couldn't really be more specific in your analysis.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, so how do you feel like this relates to cities and urbanism and our usual topics?
So that's a good question, right? So obviously, as you know, I love cities and urbanism, and it's central to my interest point. And I think to be like that chemistry professor who says that kind of chemistry is everywhere, it's all around you, I would really make the same point about cities, that they really are everywhere and they kind of encompass everything. And this, in this case, is a public major research university. And so it's a metropolitan one that is one of the largest ones in the United States. And so at the point where we focus on schools and how they can provide for us, I think that really being aware of what's available on campus is kind of similar in all honesty to life experiences. And I'm not just talking for individuals with exceptionalities, I'm talking for people in general. So Tinto is a widely cited scholar in higher education, and he has a theory called the model of institutional departure. And basically, what it says is that to persist, students need formal, like academic performance success, but they also need informal engagement. They need interactions with a point person on campus. They need to be involved in some type of activities, and they need to have some informal group or peer relationships on campus. And so much of the literature and information around individuals' exceptionalities has kind of been centered on like a medical basis of just prescription and you need this to succeed, when in reality, it's every student on campus, even if they aren't eligible for these specific services, could benefit and may be more likely to participate to graduation if they are using the services available, whether it be the Student Academic Resource Center or some of the other academic services that they might have available to them. And so where I come up with the importance of that is one of the things I found in my study was it appeared based on the sample size that I got and also based on other previous research on individuals that use accommodations post-secondary, only around 20 to 25% of them actually do. So that means a majority of people are not going out and using these things. And see, this is insightful. I think I guess the question our viewers might be wondering is, okay, where's he going with this, right? So Peter Kagiyama, right? He's actually from St. Petersburg, and he has a blog and he wrote a book, I believe, called For the Love of Cities. And in it, he kind of talked about what makes us love our cities, what makes us feel a sense of belonging. And from what I remember, there are two really core tenets or points in terms of actually feeling that belonging, that you persist to graduation, you persist in the city you live in. So that's kind of, if we're drawing those parallels there, right? So what he's articulated is that if you partake in local businesses, whether it be a coffee shop or local boutique, and if you go to local parks, that you are far more likely to feel a sense of belonging, enjoy where you live, and actually persist in living there.
Right.
And I think that kind of relates a lot to what Tinto is saying about that involvement in general. And I think that really connects to this whole idea of students seeking out and benefiting from the services that are available to them. I think that making sure that they're presented in a good way and that they can be used and that they're available, but also that kind of that intentional decision making by people to use services that might benefit their lives in some way. It might not be economic, it might not be advancing their career necessarily, but some point on that level that it's going to benefit them. I guess the parting thought I'll leave with that is there was a Harvard study and it talked about kind of upward mobility, escaping poverty. And the single most important factor they used in that long frame study was whether the person had a functional access to a reasonable commuting time. Do they have access to a car, or if they are economically limited, do they have access to public transportation? And that was the central factor, bar none, of whether they would be able to escape poverty and thrive. So I guess wrapping this all up in terms of my thinking on the relation of it, that it's important that these services exist, and it's important that students in this case are using and benefiting from them, but it's also looking at, if people aren't, what's the next step? That is the next step. What can we do to connect more people to resources that can benefit their daily lives?
Gotcha.
So I know that was a lot.
Yeah, I mean, I see where you're coming from in the idea that these, just like you have sort of community amenities in the city, in a town, whatever the local community is. And these amenities, if they engage with the residents, are more likely to create a community feel and also keep those residents where they are. That's similar to creating a successful environment for students and keeping them where they are to reach that endpoint of graduation, rather than quitting and leaving before graduation, which would be, I guess, like somebody jumping ship and moving to another town.
Another place. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or just not feeling fulfilled in that place. I mean, I think there's so many people you hear about out there that like just really are maybe not all that satisfied with where they live now. And that's in some ways that disenchanted resident is not all that much better than one that actually chooses to relocate.
Right. You're right. You're right. And I guess, the university isn't strictly about matriculating students, but it's also about helping them achieve their best, version of themselves and achieve the success that they want to achieve. And so that's another parallel.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay, very cool, very cool. I mean, it feels a bit abstract to me.
Yes, it is. It's probably a bit of a reach to discuss accessibility services on a urbanism podcast, but I think promoting access is, central mission, or should be a central mission for most urbanists in general. So I guess in that sense, it broadly speaking ties in.
Yeah, to be honest, because we haven't really spoken about this topic much, you and me, whether on the show or just privately. And I was kind of assuming that there was going to be much more, like your paper was more on sort of the physical environment, and we're talking about physical accessibility here. And I didn't realize it was actually not about that at all. And so it makes it much more abstract to me, but I like it.
Yeah.
I do like it.
I think that's an area for future research too. I mean, I think on a couple levels, like what you said brings up interesting thoughts for me. One is looking at those physical barriers, because I think they are present on a college campus in many cases, and they're also present in kind of our downtown areas in some cases where we talk about, I think there's even some places that get accessibility scores in that case, but also kind of what does it look like to navigate a human place, whether it be suburban or urban, for someone with ADHD? Like what does navigating the metro network, how can that be improved? What are all these subtleties? And to be honest with you, I don't think there's been a ton of thought really intentionally spent on that by anyone.
Yeah, and I also like to point out that a lot of times when we get together as urbanists, talk about cities, there's so much focus on the physical, the environments, the spaces, and placemaking, and rightly so. But sometimes we forget that, in my opinion, an equal part of that equation of creating a city and a community and an urban environment is the people, and how the people feel, how they feel within that environment, how they play off of each other as well. I mean, that's what creates vibrancy. That's what creates a community. And
that organic interaction, it's culture. Yeah.
And so this is a lot more along the lines of what you were looking at within the university context, higher education, like the people and how they, our feelings, how we feel about the support systems and all of that. So yeah. Cool. Well, congrats again. I know that was a long journey for you.
Thank you.
Ultimately culminating in a very successful finish. So
you can finish. And it's honestly, in the comment section, the biggest thing I'll say is this is a really difficult process, and it's, people can joke and they can say about, the procrastination process and all that, but it can be difficult. So I'll honestly say, make sure you take care of your mental health. Make sure you take care of your relationships with your loved ones and those around you. And honestly, if you in the commenters, if you have any concerns or questions about going through a similar journey, my goal would be to help you get through there. You will get there. And I mean, even if it's just having someone sit with you and make you do, I think there's something to be said for not letting the perfect be the enemy of the done. And that can't be said strongly enough. So if you are watching this and you're going through a similar journey, know that you absolutely can get there, and we'd be happy to hear from you and see how we can help.
Awesome. All right, Chuck, as always, a pleasure chatting. I'll see you next time.
Yes, absolutely.